Trump tried to win the crowd with noise. Obama won hearts with one quiet truth about his wife. The evening was electric with anticipation, the kind of tension that only builds when two powerful figures stand poised to clash under the unforgiving gaze of live television. It was a nationally televised town hall, broadcast across the country from a packed venue in Scottsdale, Arizona. Every seat was filled, every lens trained, every device streaming. Millions of viewers, both in the room and at home, leaned forward, knowing that when such colossal personalities collide, the fallout is rarely dull. On one side of the stage, Barack Obama sat in his familiar composed posture, spine straight, fingers interlaced, face calm, but not vacant. The sort of serenity that comes not from apathy, but from years of weathering storms. Across from him sat Donald Trump, leaning forward slightly, his trademark half smile curling his lips, eyes flashing with the restless glint of someone ready to strike. He waited for the right moment, not for a policy debate, not for substance, but for spectacle. The moderator was barely halfway through the evening's topics when it happened. No buildup, no segue, just a verbal strike hurled with the force of a headline-chasing sledgehammer. "You know, Barack," Trump said, his voice amplified through the hall, every syllable designed to echo. "A lot of people still wonder if your marriage to Michelle is even real. Maybe it's all for the cameras. Maybe it's just a prop, a performance. People are talking about it everywhere." His words, deliberately barbed, sliced through the night like a thrown blade. The hall fell silent, the sort of hush that isn't peace but pressure. Heads turned, breaths caught, and even the seasoned moderator shifted uncomfortably in his chair. This wasn't a jab at a policy or a critique of leadership. This was a direct shot at the most intimate foundation of a man's life, his family. Cameras zoomed in instantly, hoping to capture the first flicker of reaction across Obama's face. The crowd, a mosaic of both supporters and skeptics, exchanged furtive glances, some shaking their heads, others whispering, "Did he really just go there?" Obama, however, did not flinch. He didn't frown, didn't dart his eyes toward the moderator for rescue, didn't meet Trump's gloating look with visible anger. Instead, he sat still, eerily still, like a man who has learned that the most potent response often begins with restraint. That pause, the deliberate silence, was its own kind of message. It wasn't submission. It was assessment. It was control. For decades, Barack Obama had been tempered by public life, the slings and arrows of campaign trails, the relentless glare of the Oval Office, the undercurrent of those who doubted, dismissed, or derided him. But this attack wasn't only about him. It was about Michelle Obama, the woman with whom he had built a life brick by brick across more than 30 years of partnership, parenthood, and perseverance. Trump had aimed for a weak spot, but in doing so, he had revealed more about himself than his target. The crowd, still caught between discomfort and expectation, sensed it too. Trump, confident in his blow, leaned back with that practiced air of dominance, smirk tugging wider as if to say, "This will trend for days." But what followed did not unfold as he had imagined. Obama leaned forward, not abruptly, not theatrically, but with the slow precision of someone ready to pick apart a provocation. His voice, when it came, was soft, conversational almost, but beneath that calm lay steel. "Donald," he began, pausing just enough for the tension to tighten again. "When you've shared over 3 decades with someone, through the struggles and the triumphs, the mundane days and the milestones, you don't need to justify that bond to anyone, least of all to someone who measures relationships by what they can get from them." A ripple moved through the audience, hesitant at first, then building into applause. Some clapped quietly, others nodded. A few even rose slightly from their seats. The former president didn't raise his voice, didn't meet venom with venom. Instead, he let authenticity do the work that outrage never could. Trump's smirk faltered, his hand twitching near the microphone as he tried to wrest back the narrative with a dismissive, "Fake news. Everyone's talking about it. People know the truth." But this time, his interjection was swallowed by a growing wave of approval sweeping the room. Obama's expression barely shifted, save for the faint curl of a knowing smile. "Michelle isn't a prop," he said steadily. "She's my partner, my confidant, my best friend, and the reason I became the man standing here today. That isn't a storyline, Donald. That's a life. And that's not something up for debate. The hall erupted, this time louder, more united. Phones flashed as attendees captured the moment. Clips began ricocheting across social media within minutes. Hashtags igniting as news outlets scrambled to reframe their coverage from a routine forum into a live confrontation that now carried the weight of something historic. Trump tried to interject again, his voice louder, harsher. You can say what you want, Barack, but people out there know it's all staged. They don't believe you. Yet even among his supporters, the reaction was tepid. The crowd was shifting, not just in mood, but in allegiance. What they were witnessing was more than a spat. It was a study in contrasts. One man sought power through mockery. The other held it through composure. Obama didn't bite at the bait. He waited. Then, with a steady breath, he spoke again. When your life is built on performance, it's hard to recognize what's real. Some of us still believe in loyalty, in love that doesn't need an audience to exist. This time, the applause didn't ripple. It roared. Laughter bubbled from the back rows, and a voice rang out. That's right. The momentum had shifted entirely. Reporters typed furiously, their tweets forming headlines before the exchange had even finished. Trump, unused to being dismantled without theatrics, gripped his microphone tighter, his complexion reddening under the heat of the lights. But Obama wasn't finished. He turned slightly toward the audience, not to grandstand, but to anchor his words in shared humanity. The reason people respect Michelle and me isn't because of cameras. It's because for decades, they've seen how we treat each other when nobody is watching. That's what a marriage is. It's the quiet promises, the sacrifices unseen, the small choices that add up to a life. Applause again. This time more unified, less hesitant, like a tide finding its rhythm. Obama nodded once, then looked back at Trump, his tone still measured. Michelle has been my anchor since before any of this. He gestured lightly toward the cameras. And I don't expect you to understand that kind of steadfastness, because steadfastness means putting someone ahead of yourself. The line landed like a well-aimed arrow. The audience erupted, many on their feet, some whistling, others cheering his name. Trump tried to laugh it off, chuckling into his mic. Oh, come on, Barack. No one's buying that perfect family act. But Obama didn't claim perfection. He dismantled the premise itself. No family is perfect, Donald. That's the point. Marriage isn't about flawlessness. It's about commitment. When the storms come, you don't just leave. You hold the line. You grow together. The response was thunderous. Clapping, shouting, even a chant beginning to rise. Trump, now visibly agitated, pressed harder. You sound like a greeting card. It's fake. They've seen the photos, the rumors. They know it's Hollywood. Obama leaned in slightly, his voice calm but cutting. The difference between us, Donald, is that I don't need to convince anyone. I live it. Michelle and I built our life while paying student loans, raising daughters, juggling work and family, not for applause, but because that's what partnership is. Cheers. Applause. A woman shouted, "We love you, Michelle." And for the first time, Obama allowed himself a genuine, unguarded smile. Trump, never one to retreat quietly, barked back. All talk. That's all you do. But now, the crowd wasn't with him. Even some who had entered the room neutral or skeptical were watching the dynamic shift in real time. They were seeing the difference between sincerity and spectacle. Obama's tone hardened slightly, his words cutting cleaner now. You can question my policies. You can question my decisions as a leader, but you do not demean my wife. Not tonight. Not ever, because this is one commitment that has outlasted every attack, every rumor, every insult, and we are still standing. The room exploded, this time, uncontainable. The moderator raised his hands in vain to calm them. The cameras drank in every angle. The standing ovation, the ripple of chants, the quiet fury etched on Trump's face. And then, with the crowd still buzzing, Obama delivered the final stroke, not loud, not cruel, but definitive. At the end of the day, he said, marriages don't endure because of cameras, or ratings, or applause. They endure because two people make the choice, day after day, to keep showing up for each other. That's what Michelle and I have done for over 30 years. And if that's hard for you to believe, Donald, maybe that says more about you than it does about us. The hall shook with approval. Laughter mixed with cheers. Chants swelled. And for the first time that night, Donald Trump leaned back not in triumph, but in silence. The atmosphere inside the hall was thick with tension, the kind that electrifies an audience before something unforgettable happens. The cameras were already live, broadcasting every flicker of expression to millions of viewers scattered across the nation. Two men occupied the stage, both emblematic of very different approaches to leadership, both familiar faces in the American consciousness. One was calm, seated with the kind of poise that comes only from years of navigating storms in public life. The other was restless, leaning forward, finger poised on the trigger of provocation, searching for the one shot that might shake his rival before the nation's eyes. What unfolded next would become the flashpoint everyone talked about long after the lights dimmed. With little preamble, Donald Trump launched his verbal attack. His words were chosen for sting, not substance. His voice, louder than the murmur of the crowd, cut through the evening like a jagged blade. You treat marriage like a performance, Barack. Everyone knows it's for the cameras. People are saying it's fake. It wasn't framed as a question. It was an accusation, a taunt, a deliberate attempt to provoke. For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. It wasn't the kind of comment expected in a debate or a policy forum. It was deeply personal, directed not only at Barack Obama, but at the woman who had stood beside him for decades, through campaigns, sleepless nights, and relentless public scrutiny. The moderator shifted in his seat, eyes darting nervously, unsure whether to intervene. The audience rippled with low murmurs, a mix of disbelief and discomfort. A few supporters of Trump clapped uncertainly, but most of the room seemed frozen, waiting for the counterstrike. And yet, Obama didn't rush to fill the silence. He didn't reach for the microphone or let his face harden. Instead, he let the weight of Trump's words settle. Silence can be more powerful than noise. And in that silence, the former president prepared to turn an insult into an inflection point. When he finally spoke, it wasn't with volume, but with clarity. "Donald," he said, voice steady, "you see relationships as contracts, deals you walk away from when the terms stop benefiting you. I see marriage as a promise, one I intend to honor for life." The reaction was immediate. The hall erupted with cheers, clapping so loud it drowned the faint protests Trump tried to shout over them. Reporters' keyboards clattered in rapid bursts. A journalist whispered to his colleague, "That line is going to be everywhere before midnight." Trump, unwilling to yield, jabbed back with his finger, voice raised. "The media props you up, Barack. Without them, your whole image collapses. Nobody believes you." But the words felt more desperate than cutting. Obama leaned back slightly, his voice even softer now, drawing the audience in rather than shouting them down. "When Michelle and I come home at the end of the day, there are no cameras, no scripts, no applause. Just two people cooking dinner, checking homework, laughing about the day. That's real life, Donald, and no amount of money can buy it. No amount of power can fake it, and no insult can break it." The applause that followed shook the stage. Some stomped their feet, others whistled. Trump's expression tightened, his knuckles whitening on the microphone. "You think you're better than everyone else," he shot back. "You think you're some kind of hero, but you're not. You're just a man with a microphone and a friendly press corps." Obama didn't flinch. His response came measured, almost conversational. "I don't believe I'm above anyone. I do believe that respect and love belong together. And when you respect your partner, you don't turn them into a punchline." The crowd reacted instantly, leaping to its feet with roars of approval. Shouts of "yes" and "that's right" echoed around the hall. Trump sat rigid, jaw clenched. The jab he had hoped would humiliate his opponent had circled back, exposing the cruelty beneath it. The moderator tried to regain control. "Let's pivot to policy, gentlemen." But his words were drowned out by the rising wave of noise. Obama sat silently, letting the moment breathe. He didn't milk the applause. He didn't grandstand. The room spoke for him. Then he leaned forward again, elbows on his knees, voice firm but not raised. "Donald, you say our marriage is staged. But what people have seen over the years is two people who chose each other long before there was power or cameras or politics. They've seen us raise two daughters, lean on each other when life got heavy, celebrate each other when success came. That isn't fake. That's life." The applause surged again, but Obama continued. I'll tell you what is fake. Standing on this stage claiming to champion family values while building a career out of betraying them. The gasp that rolled through the hall was almost as loud as the laughter that followed. Trump's face reddened, his grip on the microphone unsteady. Michelle isn't just my wife, Obama went on. She's the one who grounds me when ego threatens to pull me away from who I promised to be. She calls me out when I stumble. She reminds me where I came from. That's what real partnership looks like. If you don't recognize it, Donald, maybe it's because you've never allowed yourself to. Trump tried again, his voice now edged with strain. You think you're perfect. You think you've got the golden marriage, the golden life. But people aren't stupid. They know there's dirt. Obama's reply was quiet but devastating. Perfection isn't the goal. Perseverance is. When I fall short, Michelle doesn't walk away. We learn. We adjust. We keep moving together. That's what a real bond looks like in marriage and in leadership. The crowd, now fully in his corner, chanted his name. Trump leaned forward, sneering. The media eats this up. You're a showman, Barack. Obama turned slightly toward the crowd, his tone sharp but controlled. When you live your truth, you don't need the media to cheer for you. People can see it. I don't need to put Michelle on a magazine cover to prove we're real. She proves it every day, just by showing up. The room thundered. Even the moderator couldn't suppress a faint smile. This was no longer a sparring match. It had become a dismantling, executed with calm precision. Trump muttered, "Weak. So weak." But his words rang hollow. Obama, seizing the lull, added, "A man doesn't show strength by tearing down his partner. Strength is standing beside her, especially when the world tests you both. Michelle and I have done that for over 30 years. And no headline, no rumor, no cheap shot has changed it." The audience erupted again, some chanting Michelle's name. Phones were held high, capturing history in real time. Trump, face flushed, slammed his hand against the table. "This is a joke. You're selling them a story." But the harder he pushed, the clearer the contrast became. One man loud and flailing, the other steady, unmoved. Obama leaned back, voice calm as ever. "Sometimes when people laugh at you, Donald, it isn't because they believe you. It's because they see through you. And tonight, that's exactly what they're doing." The laughter that followed was sharp and widespread. Across the country, viewers were already replaying the moment on social media. Hashtags began to climb within minutes. #respect over noise. #Michael Strong. #Obama Strong. Clips spread across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok like wildfire. One viral edit paired Trump's angry outburst with circus music. Another froze on Obama's serene expression with the caption, "Grace under fire." By the next morning, the numbers were staggering. Tens of millions of views. Headlines declaring Obama's mastery of the moment. Even outlets reluctant to praise him couldn't avoid showing the clip. Fox News framed it as overreaction, but their audience shared it anyway. MSNBC ran it on a loop. CNN's Chiron read, "Obama defends marriage." Crowd roars. Local papers carried still shots of Obama mid-sentence, hand raised. The room behind him a sea of standing applause. But what made the moment powerful wasn't just the clapback. It was what it represented. It wasn't a man flaunting a perfect life. It was a man defending the quiet, imperfect, resilient love that millions recognized in their own homes. Couples across the country saw themselves in that exchange. The late nights, the bills, the compromises, the laughter that keeps things together. In Phoenix, a single mother texted her sister, "That's the kind of man women deserve." In Ohio, an elderly couple over breakfast replayed the clip and said, "That's how you stand by your spouse." Celebrities joined the chorus. Kerry Washington tweeted, "Protect Black love. Protect Michelle." LeBron James posted the clip with, "Masterclass in respect." Memes contrasted Obama's calm presence with Trump's red-faced outbursts, labeling one steadiness and the other chaos. Trump's team scrambled to spin it, insisting he was just asking questions. But the damage was done. What people had seen was a man try to weaponize a marriage and fail in the most public way possible. Obama hadn't just defended his wife. He had turned the attack into a reflection of the values many wish their leaders and their relationships embodied: loyalty, respect, perseverance. As the news cycle rolled on, Analysts debated whether it would shift polls, energize bases, or reshape the coming election. But in diners, classrooms, office break rooms, and late-night phone calls, the conversation was more personal, about the way love should look when tested, about how strength doesn't have to shout to be heard. By the time the dust settled, the viral clip was more than a political moment. It was a cultural one. It reminded millions that in a world obsessed with performance, authenticity still cuts through the noise. It proved that sometimes the most powerful response isn't a roar, but a calm, unshakable truth spoken with conviction. In a moment that felt more like a conversation at a kitchen table than a political broadcast, Barack Obama spoke with the calm confidence of someone who has lived through the trials he was describing. Across town, Clara Thomas, a grandmother raising 5 lively grandchildren, watched the exchange unfold on her tablet. She tapped the screen lightly as she turned to her friend and said, "That's what true partnership looks like. My husband and I have faced medical scares, empty bank accounts, and long nights wondering if we'd make it through. But we stayed. We kept choosing each other." Her voice carried both the weight of struggle and the warmth of triumph. "That's why people respect him," she added softly, almost as if speaking to herself. Hundreds of miles away in a Phoenix high school, a handful of teachers huddled in their break room, coffee cups in hand, and lunch half eaten, watching the same clip on a cracked laptop screen. Laughter rippled as the video replayed a familiar scene. Donald Trump slamming the table, shouting fake over and over again. Laura Delgado, a history teacher known for her patience with even the most restless students, leaned back and said, "I don't care what party you vote for, that's embarrassing." He looked like a teenager throwing a tantrum. Marcus Lee, the physics teacher, nodded in agreement. Obama sounded like he was guarding something precious. "It wasn't about politics for me. It felt like something real, something that matters." Analysts noticed this ripple effect almost immediately. Overnight data from major polling firms, Pew, Gallup, and others, showed a distinct upward shift in how Americans viewed Obama, particularly among those not firmly tied to either side. Words like honor, composure, and class floated to the top of survey responses when people were asked to describe the moment. Even on networks usually critical of him, anchors had to admit that Trump came off as reactive, flustered, and oddly small in comparison. But the true impact wasn't found in poll numbers or cable news debates. It was in the quiet living rooms, the cluttered kitchens, the parked cars where people paused a moment longer to talk about what they'd seen. In Detroit, a mother of 3 named Karen Fields recorded a video from her kitchen table. Her voice cracked slightly as she said, "When Obama reminded us that marriage isn't about being perfect, it's about not giving up, I cried. A few years ago, we almost lost everything, but we fought for each other." That moment on TV, it felt like he was talking to me. Her clip was shared over 100,000 times in a single day. A continent away in Dallas, a young man named Jameer made his own post, this time on TikTok. "Look at this. Obama didn't even raise his voice. Trump's over there red as a cherry yelling, fake, and Obama's just sitting like, this is love. This is how it's done." Millions watched, laughed, and nodded. Soon, it wasn't about 2 men on a stage. It became a mirror, reflecting the kind of respect people wanted to see in their leaders, and even more importantly, in themselves. A radio host in Phoenix opened the lines the next morning, and caller after caller repeated the same word: dignity. One father said, "I don't agree with him on every issue, but that's the kind of man I want my son to grow up seeing." Another caller, a woman in her 60s, added, "Trump looked rattled. Obama looked like a man." Even outside America, the moment traveled. Newspapers in Europe ran headlines praising his calm defense of his wife. Commentators in Germany and France replayed the footage as an example of American leadership at its most human, not its loudest, but its truest. What seemed like a viral clash turned into a moment of quiet reckoning. Couples watched it together in silence, some reaching for each other's hands, others whispering promises they hadn't spoken in years. Pastors wove the moment into Sunday sermons. Teachers used it to start conversations about respect with their students. Parents paused to show their kids what it means to protect someone you love without shouting, without tearing anyone else down. Dr. Felicia Ward, a political scientist at Arizona State University, explained on public radio, "This was never about Obama or Trump. It was about the hunger people have for a different kind of leadership, one that doesn't mistake loudness for strength." For years, Politics had been dominated by noise, oversized rallies, biting insults, and sound bites designed to burn hotter than they lasted. But that night, something quieter made the loudest impact. Obama's words weren't revolutionary in their content. They were ordinary, even old-fashioned. But their delivery, steady and restrained, became the real headline. Michelle Obama didn't even release a statement, and that silence made it louder. Her husband's defense carried the meaning. Social media became a scrapbook of stories. Anniversaries celebrated, hardships endured, and young people seeing in their elders a template worth following. Hashtags like #StandByYourPartner and #RealStrength trended for days. A teenager posted a video of her grandparents dancing in their living room with the caption, "This is what he meant." It reached millions. What emerged was a reminder that leadership is not about spectacle, but steadiness. It's not about how sharply you can cut someone else down, but how firmly you stand beside those you claim to love. In Cleveland, a father told his teenage son after watching the clip, "That's what I want you to learn, how to treat the people you care about with respect, even when the world is watching." The boy nodded, and for the first time in months, they talked, not about politics, but about what real commitment looks like. By the time the headlines shifted and new controversies took their place, the essence of that night had already seeped into something more lasting. A lesson about restraint in a time of noise, about grace when provoked, about love as a deliberate act of courage rather than a photo opportunity. One man in Boston summed it up as he posted a picture of his parents holding hands after 35 years together. Respect matters. It's not weakness. It's the glue. And that, perhaps, is why the moment endured. It reminded people, married or single, young or old, on one side of the aisle or the other, that real strength is rarely the loudest voice in the room. It's the one that can stay grounded when insulted, the one that can speak truth without venom, the one that protects what matters without performing for applause. As one caller to a late-night radio show in Dallas put it, "I didn't just watch a debate. I watched a man show us what love looks like when the cameras are on." And that may be the takeaway that lingers. Dignity outlasts noise. Patience outshines provocation. And loyalty, quiet, steady, unshakable, is still something worth admiring. Not because it's perfect, but because it chooses, again and again, to stand firm. So when the town hall faded from the news cycle, what stayed was not the clash, but the choice it revealed, to lead not with fury, but with fidelity. Whether you're a teacher in a break room, a couple on your balcony, or a parent guiding your child, the lesson is the same. True strength isn't about tearing others down. It's about lifting up what you love, even when the world is watching.